Welcome back to this year's SME National Forum with the title SMEs and Green Growth, the Journey Ahead. To continue with our second part of this conference, I would like to invite Honourable Miriam Dalli, who unfortunately wasn't able to be with us due to governmental commitments, to give us her speech on today's occasion.
Good morning to all. It is indeed a pleasure to address this year's MEA conference, more so because of the importance that the Malta Employers Association is giving to the greening of our economic model. Just like our SMEs were a crucial pillar of growth for our economic development in recent years, I'm a strong believer that our enterprises have the potential to be critical enablers for our generation's commitment for a stronger, greener and more sustainable economic model. I'm really glad to see that this conviction of mine is being embraced in our wider government policy, which is clearly directed towards ensuring a holistic and firm transition towards a greener economic model. The fiscal budget for 2022 clearly reflects this economic vision, with a myriad of directional measures all pointing towards incentivizing green growth and supporting our entrepreneurs as they invest in greener business models. Now, undeniably, this commitment comes with its challenges, because I have to say that I am at the same time encouraged to see our business community not just embracing this challenge, but really and truly eager to be at the forefront of this transformation. And today, almost a year since being entrusted with the ministerial responsibility for both Maltese enterprises and sustainable development, I can see the real change in corporate mindset across, which is now prioritizing more efficient business models supported by green investments and an ecosystem which allows capital to enable the twin transition of our economy. What is even more encouraging is the fact that the challenges brought about by the pandemic did not disrupt the overall desire and commitment of our entrepreneurs to invest for a stronger digital and more sustainable business model. These are the investments that will make our businesses truly competitive and future-proof in a post-pandemic global economy. Today, ESG investing and sustainable investment projects are rapidly becoming priority areas in board discussions. And I am pleased to continuously meet Maltese entrepreneurs, directors, and decision-makers who are leading this transition by actively pursuing green corporate projects. Above all, we are committed to keep on supporting, incentivizing and enabling Maltese SMEs to invest in greener business models that can and that will enhance the profitability of your companies. Because by investing in sustainable projects, Maltese enterprises will do well for themselves whilst they do well for the benefit of our wider society. We are serious in driving forward a consistent transition towards a carbon-neutral Maltese economy. We know where we want to go and we know how to get there. The 2022 budget is indeed a toolbox of commercial incentives that will make it easier for our companies, particularly our SMEs, to achieve greener growth and sustainable profits in the coming years. That's why we are making available one of the most aggressive investment aid schemes for investment in smart and sustainable business models through substantial cash grants and also tax credits. That's why, for example, we will support the reinvestment of profits, because as much as we were supporting partners during the pandemic, we now want to support you in investing in your future. And that's why Malta Enterprise will be supporting you through special soft loans that will improve your access to finance for sustainable projects. That's why the Development Bank will be extending the eligibility of the SME loans, which will now allow you to finance up to €5 million for green projects. That's why Malta Enterprise will be supporting the electrification of commercial vehicles through a dedicated scheme. We will help our companies attract local and international funds by helping them invest in sustainable projects and showcase their ESG credentials to investors. We want you, our business community, to lead the transition towards a more sustainable economy. Because yes, we believe that we can only achieve this through your commitment. So this is our objective. leading our enterprises towards a greener and a stronger future. And just like we did during the most challenging months of the pandemic, I look forward to keep strengthening further our solid working relationship, our mutual trust, together with this collaborative attitude, and above all, to keep on nurturing our unhindered commitment towards a greener and more resilient Maltese enterprise. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Thank you, Honourable Miriam Dalli, Minister for Energy, Enterprise and Sustainable Development. Of course, your hard work and your energy is felt very much, and I do believe that leaders attract leaders, so it is very important that all the people she is addressing, in fact, are the ones who are going to be the leaders in taking charge and in making use of all these grants and schemes and projects in order to move us into the next phase. It is now time to listen to the Honourable Aaron Farrugia's speech, Minister for the Environment, Climate Change and Planning. Once again, thank you for giving us the speech, and unfortunately, of course, they were not able to be here present with us due to governmental commitments.
I am honoured to have been invited to deliver this short video message to the SMEs National Forum 2021, organised by the Malta Employers Association. SMEs have always been fundamental for Malta's development and prosperity, and my government is committed to continue supporting Malta's SMEs as key drivers to achieve the vision of the Malta we want for our children. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a time of unprecedented change. COVID-19 has left the world shaking, and climate change is threatening to cause widespread upheaval unless humanity addresses the much-needed reduction in greenhouse gases emissions, as well as the spurring loss of biodiversity and damage to ecosystems and our environment. Traditional linear models of production and consumption have proven to have a devastating impact. A business-as-usual approach is no longer viable. We cannot continue consuming beyond the planet's limits. For our own sake, and more importantly, for the sake of our children and our future generations, we need to adopt a well-being approach to policy decisions. We must look beyond the traditional income approach and think beyond and start to rely more and more on a system that valorizes the world that surrounds us in terms of sustainability. We need to allow our drive, our resolve, and our commitment for the future to be based on a green growth approach to development. But let me clarify, going green doesn't mean tree hugging. It doesn't mean stopping development. But it also doesn't mean ignoring the realities of our people who are crying out for more green spaces, for more of Mother Nature. Going green means creating a balance between people's need to grow and develop, to have comfortable homes, to have good education, with the other need to have access to nature-based recreational space where our children can appreciate the world as nature intended and not as man has fashioned it. Going green means giving nature the space to create itself, giving this wonderful miracle of life the chance to thrive. COVID-19 has put a high degree of stress on our SMEs since they do not have the muscle to withstand the shocks that larger companies have. The government has appreciated this and has assisted SMEs through a robust package of measures and grants that have helped them survive the onslaught of the pandemic to different degrees of success. Government, however, continues to be committed to sustain SMEs, as the recent Budget 2022 provisions have amply shown, through a diverse set of actions designed to ensure revival of our economy, to which SMEs are central. The challenge of climate change is pervasive and inescapable, and here too SMEs have a central role. SMEs are drivers of growth, and they can also be green catalysts transforming their orientation towards the new realities of the European Green Deal and prosperity through sustainability, building back better through the integration of climate considerations into the business design, and my government is there to help. It is a journey that we have charted out in our post-pandemic strategy, in our vision for the future, as further directly embodied in our low-carbon development strategy and the long-term renovation strategy. Climate change is a big challenge, but the strategy we have developed gives us hope. It shows us the way and puts forward tangible measures to be implemented. For we have been careful and mindful. We have identified the measures that give us the best results for every euro spent. We are aware that behavior needs to change, but we have designed actions to instigate the change, providing direct assistance along the way. Measures have been costed. We know what each will deliver and when. Free public transport, as from next year, will divert unnecessary traffic from our roads, making journeys quicker and less polluting. Grants for electric cars are unbeatable by any similar measure in Europe. €11,000 up by €8,000. Charging pillars will be installed in public roads and will also incentivize the installation of electric car charging points in private car spaces. Likewise, we will ensure the SMEs are provided with technical and fiscal assistance to make the leap towards a new model of growth. It's a journey that we will undertake together, for we truly believe in you as the motor of the new future. We will promote the uptake of energy efficiency and energy performance in homes and in our businesses, and we will incentivize decarbonized technologies, renewable energy through solar panels, and we will also explore offshore renewables. All this while ensuring a robust energy mix that guarantees security of energy supply and prices that are transparent and affordable. We will sustain schemes towards models of circular economy, reducing waste and improving waste management, investing more than €500 million to give our country the best, because the best is what you and what our people merit. Finally, let me assure that my government is there to listen. My government is there to collaborate, to work with you. I augur you the most fruitful discussions and look forward to being informed of the outcome of what I'm sure will be a very successful conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Farrugia. A lot of responsibility is being put on you SMEs, I must say, from these messages. However, I am sure, like you've done in the past, you will be the leaders and you will take to the table from these discussions and from what you've been sharing today during this conference to the government and to all the stakeholders in order to have your plans, your proposals put into action. And I really do wish all the very best to all the SMEs. One final comment from a minister who also supported this conference, and that is Honourable Minister Ian Borge, Minister for Transport, Infrastructure and Capital Projects. Let's hear what he had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I'd like to apologize with you all for not making it to be in person with you this morning. However, I'm abroad on government duties. I truly believe that balance is key to everything. This government's position is one which is firm and crystal clear. This is a pro-environment government. A case in point was this year's budget, with measures such as the very well-received free public transport for all, a measure which we believe, apart from accommodating everyone with free public transport, as the name implies, will also incentivize people from different spheres of our society to rapidly make the shift to a cleaner alternate mode of transport, the public transport itself. The government gave also the largest EV grants package this year in order to lift some of the people's burden and aid those who opt to buy electric vehicles. Those who then also scrap their old vehicle can even sign up for scrappage grant, which in this year's budget was also increased by €3,000 and therefore from €9,000 to €12,000. Despite the pandemic's effect, this government never failed to hold up to its hard-working ethic, especially in the transport sector. The fast ferry service is a prime example of alternative sea transport, already used by 250,000 users in the first 4 months since its inception. The government is all for the electrification of vehicles, and in fact one of the main targets till 2030 is to have all the public transport fleet electrified, a total of 370 vehicles. The government is investing also €40 million from European funds to reach this goal. An important measure which the government is currently working on is active transport, also as part of the low-carbon development strategy. We are working towards incentivizing the use of e-bikes and pedelecs, and also towards more bike-sharing services. Most of all, and it is very important to note, is the fact that this is a government with a long-term vision. A case in point is the mass transportation and the metro proposal, to which I urge for a national discussion. Shifting towards capital projects and the environment, as a main point of departure, one can start by analysing infrastructural capital projects investments such as the Marsa Junction and the Central Link. Through both these massive infrastructure projects, it becomes clearer that we are seeking to drive towards a more sustainable and cleaner Malta. The Marsa Junction, for example, has contributed to the reduction of 79% of travel time and up to 70% less of air pollution in the country's busiest intersection, along the principal route to southern Malta. The Central Link will have travel times in that area and drastically also reduce congestion pollution in nearby residential areas of Imriehel, Birkirkara, Balzan and Dattart. In fact, the project is planned to reduce particulate matter pollution by up to 66% by 2030, even when considering future transport demand. Similarly, nitrogen dioxide emissions will also decrease by 41%. Furthermore, in both these projects, we incorporated incentives for alternative modes of transport, namely the cycling lanes, with the Central Link offering the longest cycle lane in Malta with a total length of 4.3 kilometers. This is all on land. Malta's strong strategic position in sea and nautical terms is one which also cannot be denied, and history has been the best proof of this. In fact, with a 50 million investment, we are currently working on shoreside electricity project to cut over 90% of the air pollution that cruise liners and ro-ro ships produce when visiting the Grand Harbour. Keeping on the subject of the Grand Harbour, the government is working extensively on the regeneration of this national gem. The government's vision for the Grand Harbour will create new spaces for the maritime sector, introduce recreational areas for families, and rehabilitate also historic sites. We are looking at 9 specific zones in the Grand Harbour, which, even with the contribution of the private sector, will put Malta on the next level so that our port will remain a source of economic and social activity. We must remain humble at all times, and this government is committed to work even harder to achieve more results, to drive Malta towards more sustainability and also a better environment. We truly believe that hard work pays off, and it will.
Thank you very much, Honourable Ian Borge. I would like to once again thank the organisers of this event, Malta Employers Association, in collaboration with the Ministry for the Economy and the Industry, and also Foundation for Transport, the Malta Development Bank and Malta Enterprise, with whose help this forum was able to be coordinated and put up this morning. I'll share with you a team video produced by Green Economy Coalition. It's I've only recently heard about this, really, and I found out that the Green Economy Coalition was founded in 2009. It is the world's largest movement for green and fair economies. It has built an international network of charities, businesses, citizens groups, and civil society united by the principles of a green economy, launched national dialogue hubs across 4 continents, and has also mainstreamed the idea of just transition, one that builds a livable green future for all, not just the few. Let us see what they had to say. And we come back, and in fact, this part is going to be dedicated to addressing the green economy and its challenges from an international perspective and in conformity with the European Green Deal and climate change action plans. We have 4 panelists. One will be joining us here shortly. And online, we have Carmen Novella, former member of the European Commission. We have Giorgio Mossanini, Team Leader, Green Entrepreneurship, Regional Activity Center for Sustainable Consumption and Production, and Kadia Dora Ezghari. She's an expert on thematic committee education, R&D. Welcome, all. Good afternoon to you all. I would like to start by inviting Carmen Novella's intervention. Mr. Vella, during your mandate, you obviously developed a leading international role in the field of ocean governance, promoting the blue economy, and worked to improve the environmental and economical and social sustainability of fisheries. How important is the role of SMEs in delivering the objectives of the European Green Deal?
Thank you, Claire. And as you said, I will be looking at the Green Deal from an international perspective. First of all, I have to say that the Green Deal is not just about the environment, but it is also about the economy. There is scientific proof that there is a correlation between sustainability and business performance. I have to remind everyone as well that the Green Deal's main goal is to make Europe the first climate-neutral continent. And the Green Deal is the roadmap how the European Union will deliver on its commitments about the Sustainable Development Goals and also its commitments during the Paris Agreement. And this commitment will be delivered via a number of measures, directives, and regulations. We're talking about decarbonization to address climate change. We're talking about the circular economy, about resource efficiency and competitive economy. Someone during the forum also mentioned the importance of recycling and managing our waste. We're talking about renewable energy as the main source of energy in Europe. We're talking about sustainable and smart mobility, sustainable food systems, restoring ecosystems, fighting pollution, fighting environmental degradation. And as you also mentioned, last but not least, the sustainable use of ocean resources and ways how to protect our oceans. Saying that SMEs are important for the Green Deal, I think that is an understatement. Why? Because SMEs are critical. I think that without SMEs, the Green Deal will not happen. As simple as that. And I think even the Green Deal itself emphasizes the importance of all industry, first and foremost, but especially SMEs. And the Green Deal is not just a set of directives or regulations, but most importantly, it is a fiscal and financial package to help industry deliver on the commitments of the Green Deal. We're talking about 1.1 trillion euros budget. We're talking about 750 million euros for the next generation EU in order to build back better. But yes, funds are very, very important. But the Green Deal is not only about more funds, but it's also about better planning. And it's not about the cost of action, but the far greater cost of non-action. In fact, the European Union also dedicated an SME strategy last year, an SME strategy which is built around capacity building. There was a lot of talk about skills and expertise, an SME strategy which will be addressing the reduction of regulatory burdens and bureaucracy, improving market conditions, market access, and the importance of green public procurement. Also, a facilitation of access to green finance. And I think in the future, we won't be talking more about finance, but we will be talking more about green finance as well. And obviously, assisting in the sharing of public best practices between public and private sectors. I believe that SMEs and also micro enterprises can help not just the EU to showcase its green credentials, but micro enterprises can also help Malta to showcase its green credentials. I'm talking about micro enterprises because in Malta, the vast majority of our firms, I believe it's more than 97%, are micro enterprises employing less than 10 persons. This was, I think, I read it in one of the Central Bank of Malta's 2018 report, and they handle sectors such as trade, transport, hospitality, and other services, professional financial insurance services. I have to congratulate this meeting because you had a number of things which are already ongoing, things which we can regard to best practices. And I would like to add 3 other examples of best practices. The first one, someone has already mentioned energy audits. Energy audits are important to reduce emissions by reducing energy consumption. And these are in line with the EU's priority shift to sustainable, not just energy use, but also energy supply. And I have to say that energy audits have already proven that they can improve energy efficiency, energy costs, and can increase the competitiveness of enterprises by up to 20%. The other example, one of the other best practices, is the monitoring of carbon footprints. I think that carbon footprint data is important because it allows enterprises to set targets and to measure progress about the reduction of their carbon footprint. During my time, the Commission had already launched a number of methodologies of calculating carbon footprint, not just calculating, but it gives us the opportunity to compare the carbon footprint of different products and different services in the same sector category. We had also started discussing the possibility of putting the amount of carbon footprint on eco-labels of products and services. The last best practice that I would like to mention is that we're talking a lot about circular economy, but in order for circular economy to happen, we need to have targets, and firms and enterprises need to monitor their implementation of the circular economy. I think that monitoring circular economy's implementation is important. We have to take stock of our present levels of implementation. We need to set measures and to increase the implementation levels, and that is a good sign of us implementing the circular economy. When I talk about the circular economy, there are the 360 degrees stages of the circular economy, from the design stage, extraction and use of raw materials, the use of energy, packaging, durability of the product, disposal and recycling of the product. And the whole idea is to mainstream sustainable early, very early in all the projects and all the businesses, even during the business plans. I think that the Green Deal is a win-win-win opportunity because the Green Deal will certainly benefit companies, societies, and the planet. Above all, sustainability will give an economic competitive edge as well. I think the private sector has already realized this, and we have seen a number of things that are not on paper, but things that are already happening. And I think this is a good sign. that the private sector has realized this, is already acting, and will continue to act more. I think that gains in sustainability are gains in the economy. Claire, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm not going to say good luck, because the forum is about to end, and I followed it through. It has been quite successful. So it's not good luck, but well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vella. Thank you. I would like to move on to Giorgio Mossanini. As the team leader at the Green Entrepreneurship Regional Activity Centre for Sustainable Consumption and Production, the centre works for international cooperation with Mediterranean countries on development and innovation in the production sector and civil society based on more sustainable consumption and production models. Giorgio, what programs that support sustainable entrepreneurship are you working on at the moment?
Thank you very much. First of all, of course, thank you very much for the opportunity to share a little bit our program supporting green entrepreneurs. So I will briefly introduce the main program that is called the Switcher Support Program. We call it the Switcher Support Program because for us, the green entrepreneurs, the sustainable businesses are the switchers, those that make this switch towards sustainability. So what is a sustainable entrepreneur, a green entrepreneur, or a circular entrepreneur for us? It's a new kind of entrepreneur, a new kind of business that it's needed in order to ensure the transition toward sustainable circular economy. And essentially, it's an entrepreneur and a business that not only creates economic value, creating businesses and employment, but also environmental value, addressing environmental challenges and reducing the environmental impacts of the company. And finally, also social value, addressing social needs. So how can entrepreneurs and businesses be sustainable in this sense? Well, essentially through two main approaches. On one hand, the eco-innovation approach that will permit to the entrepreneurs to provide innovative solutions to environmental change.
Giorgio's probably broke up a little bit. If we can get back to you, Giorgio, if there's
a process level, at product level. Sorry. Yeah, the second approach.
Sorry, we had a bit of a technical problem. We weren't hearing you. Can you carry on, please?
Sure. Sorry for this trouble in the connection. So the second approach that entrepreneurs can adopt is eco-design and life cycle thinking, so which will allow them to reduce the environmental
impacts
of the products and services. Life cycle. Can you hear me well, or there is
now
still some...
we can. There are some interruptions.
I'm very sorry about that.
Is it the weather?
Let's see.
Okay,
if it's improving. So I will try to continue. So in our case, how do we support switchers and the green entrepreneurs? Essentially, what we understand is that sustainable businesses and particularly entrepreneurs need a complementary set of supporting services that should be delivered by multiple stakeholders, so very different actors that will provide complementary support. So entrepreneurs need a huge variety of support services, starting from at ideation stage with business model development, for example, and then with coaching, technical assistance, incubation, support also in networking, support in access to markets and access to finance, and finally also in terms of enabling policies for sustainable business development. In this sense, multiple actors have to be engaged. It has also been stressed in different interventions today, the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement. In our case, we work at Mediterranean level, so we work with business support organizations, financial actors, and policymakers, experts, and so on. In our case, we have engaged so far almost 100 business organizations in 10 Mediterranean countries. And one of the main activities also is the transfer of methodologies and tools for the experts of those business organizations. And we have trained more than 400 experts and coaches and trainers in different countries. And we have supported almost 3,000 entrepreneurs in developing their green business model, for example. For us, one of the most important pieces of the program is to develop specific methodologies and tools for sustainable business development, because just as we understand that we need a new kind of entrepreneur, a new kind of business to achieve circular economy and sustainable production, we also need innovative tools and methodologies to support these sustainable business developments. That's why, for example, we have developed the switches.org platform, which offer access to sustainable business development tools for all the actors, all the stakeholders. It's an interactive open platform, and we have already more than 3,500 entrepreneurs in the Mediterranean that are registered. And in this platform, you can find several tools and methodologies that can support the entrepreneurs. So, for example, the green business model development methodology, the green business plan development methodologies, also an eco-design tool, which is designed for existing products and services. There are some tools to support access to market and access to finance. And finally, also an impact assessment tool that helps enterprises to assess not only their economic impact, but also the environmental and social impact of their businesses. So all those tools have been developed embedding eco-innovation, eco-design, and life cycle thinking perspective in all the stages and the content. And I will share with you the link to the platform. The tools are free of access for all the entrepreneurs and companies in Malta, of course, in the Mediterranean and beyond. So I encourage you to visit the platform. You just have to register as an entrepreneur, and you will be able to access all the tools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giorgio. I move on to Kadia. Kadia, you are an expert on energy, working with businessmen on research pertaining to education and R&D in energy technologies. This research, in fact, that it is carrying, there are 4 participating countries: Tunisia, Jordan, Egypt, and Malta as well. Can you tell us more about the objective of the study and the main conclusions?
Thank you very much for the invitation and for sharing the results of this research. In particular, thank you also to Malta Employers Association, who have been a very proactive vis-a-vis and contributor to the research study. So as you said, this research is part of the EPSOMED project, which is a 4-year project financed by the European Commission, and its aim is to enhance the private sector environment, namely by reinforcing the role of BSOs in the southern neighborhood countries. So the way this project is structured is in 3 thematic committees, including the one that you have mentioned. It's about education and R&D, and it's composed of 4 countries represented by BSOs, namely BusinessMed in Tunisia, Malta Employers Association, Federation of Egyptian Industry, and Georgia Chamber of Industry. And this committee aims to advocate at national and regional level to the transition to a more environmentally sustainable and more socially inclusive economies. So I was appointed by this committee to provide employers associations with a knowledge of what's going on in the energy sector in these different countries, with particular focus on renewable energy strategies, achievements, and also a focus on education and R&D. So after a literature review, we conducted interviews with stakeholders from Malta, Jordan, Egypt, and Tunisia in education and R&D. And this is the objective actually is to share best practices and recommendation among all these 4 countries, and also how measures, good practice can be adopted into a certain context. So what we all have observed during the research is, of course, all these countries have renewable energy objectives by 2020, 2030, and even beyond. Very good advanced countries in terms of installations or achievements are Jordan and Egypt. We have been really good examples because they have put in place an environment that's attracting investors and developers that ensure project bankability. Malta is part of is a member state of the EU, so it has obviously its own a national energy action plan. And this action plan provides a roadmap with important milestones, particularly in the installation of renewable energy, the switch from heavy fuel oil to a much cleaner fuel, which is natural gas. And then so we see all these different policies, and we try to compare with these different countries. In terms of education, we have also observed that all these countries have high education degree programs in sustainable energy, either at bachelor or master level. We also observed that Egypt, for example, have been promoting a lot of technical education program, and the other countries have been more onto higher education. In Malta, the case is that the University of Malta is the main leader in terms of, let's say, education, providing undergraduate and postgraduate programs related to energy. And the university offers a flagship program, which is called the Master of Science in Sustainable Energy, which is offered by the Institute for Sustainable Energy. So in terms also of conclusions of this reports, we emphasize on the role of BSOs in bringing to the attention of policymakers and investors the need for innovative technological solution, and also the use of renewable energy technologies, and also economic prosper of SMEs. So we encourage a partnership with BSOs and including them in this policy making process when formulating renewable energy policies, innovation policies, and program. The other conclusion, it's very important to have a governance structure to interconnect all innovation related to fields, align technical expertise, and including the different stakeholder. So this would foster a more cohesive and structured approach to raise more funds. Of course, this is the case of Malta, who is the only European member state in this group of 4 countries. So they elaborate through the Malta Council of Science and Technology, a strategy which bring a competitive advantage to the country and use the bottom-up approach. So Malta was a really good example for the other countries to create this governance structure. It's also important to promote partnership with North Mediterranean countries and South Mediterranean countries, and also this could be very beneficial to a country like Malta. This has been proven right in the studies since, for example, as I said, Jordan and Egypt are very advanced in terms of achievements and technology diversity, which could help Malta adapt to certain practices. We also encourage regional forums where all these example success stories are shared, where information is disseminated, And the role of BSOs is very critical, as they are the bridge between the private and the public sector. So the BSOs would also have this informative role to their SMEs about policies, new fiscal policies, for example, that the one were mentioned in the videos earlier. What kind of programs are out there for the private sector. And also through the study, we encourage to promote regional education programs similar to the Remena master degree between Egypt, Tunisia, and Germany. But here again, more funds need to be raised to finance these kind of initiatives. So hopefully we encourage you to read the study once it's finalized, and it should be available through Malta Employers Association. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you, Kadia. Thank you for your intervention. Joining us here live to actually address the green economy and its challenges from an international perspective is Dr. Elena Grek. Welcome. Dr. Grek has been head of the European Commission representation in Malta since 2016. How is the European Commission helping member states and consequently also businesses, of course, and employers to adapt to their working methods in line with the Fit for 55 regulation and also ensure that Europe meets its climate neutrality ambitions by 2050?
So, thank you very much for the invitation to be here today and to address this prestigious audience. Indeed, it's a very topical subject. I mean, we're in the week when COP26 is taking place. We've all heard all the big statements being made, but we're also hopefully seeing some more concrete action rather than just words. And the European Commission definitely does not want to be the one left behind. Apart from urging its member states to do more through the Fit for 55 regulation and also the Green Deal objective of reaching carbon neutrality by 2050, it's also putting its money where its mouth is, not only at European level, but also at international level. First of all, at international level, it has already pledged 1 billion euros as a commitment to improve afforestation in the world, because we all know that climate depends very much on trees, on maintaining the natural habitats around the globe. But also it's a balancing act. It's not enough to just plant trees. Of course, we have to reduce what we currently produce in terms of emissions. So for this purpose, and coming out of the pandemic that we are just coming out from, where we have seen the benefits of humanity going silent for a while, basically, the positive effect on the environment, the European Commission has set up the recovery plan for recovery fund for all the 27 member states. As guests may recall, President Ursula von der Leyen was in Malta on the 16th of September to give the government the approved Maltese plan, under which Malta will be benefiting from 316 million euros in grants from the European Union in order to target certain objectives which it needs to address in order to be able to meet the challenges of the Fit for 55 regulation, which include also afforestation, reducing carbon emissions, digitalization, and improving mobility in terms of reducing emissions from cars. Malta's plan has been hailed as one of the most ambitious, because whereas the requirements for everybody was that at least 30% of the allocation be dedicated to greening projects, Malta's plan is 54% addressed to these targets. One of the most important, I guess, for the audience we have here is the digitalization. The projects which Malta will be focusing on in order to improve digital education of citizens, of the population, of businesses, in order to improve the efficiency of the public service in terms of digital access by everyone who needs to access government, and also digitalization in terms of improving networks. We've all seen people working from home, and this has been done I mean, wherever possible, obviously, office workers mostly. This has been done with big success, but unless we had the infrastructure and unless we continue to improve the infrastructure and to teach people the relevant skills and make the necessary infrastructure available to those who can work from home, then of course you'd have one objective but not have the means to achieve it. So investing in the digitalization of the economy will be one big step towards obtaining the goals intended in the Fit for 55 package. There's also funding available to reduce carbon emissions from the carbon emissions trading scheme, wherein year by year countries will be obliged to reduce the carbon emissions they emit in terms of everything they do on a daily basis. There is what is called the Just Transition Fund, because there is appreciation that not all countries, not all regions are ready to start running on renewable energy from now. Some countries are more advanced than others. Obviously, countries like Malta, which is a very isolated member state and small with not enough sustainable resources itself, depends on imports of oil and fuel and coal and gas in order to supply its electricity needs, will need to be helped to catch up with its goals. So the Just Transition Fund aims just for that, in order to provide businesses as well as governments with assistance, financial assistance, in order to adapt their working structures, their working methods to the requirements established by the Fit for 55 package. There are many other opportunities being given in terms of funds. There's the social climate package, which allows will allow those most vulnerable, the economically poor strata of society and financially disadvantaged businesses, in order to catch up with what they need to do in terms of greening their businesses, greening their lifestyles, to adapt themselves using EU funds as grants and as loans, in both senses, to help them to meet the goals which the European Union has established for its 27 member states. Quite a tall order, but I'm sure that we do have some time, but we really need to get working on making it happen. Yes, we're a bit too late already, but so we need to double our efforts in order to make sure we get there.
Of course, and while we're at it and we've been mentioning it, what has been coming out of the COP29, and if there are any of your views that you can share with us here today. I also invite our online speakers, if there is any views from your side personally, to share with us while we are here, from what you have heard so far.
Well, I think we've started on a very positive note, I have to say. There have been some positive surprises, namely, for example, yesterday's declaration, which over 80 countries signed up to, in order to stop deforestation, including Brazil, which is one of the countries which is hardest hit, but which has contributed most to the deforestation of the Amazon. So that was one positive sign. One less positive sign is the absence of 3 of the biggest polluters from the talks: Russia, China, and Australia. These 3 countries are still quite far off from getting anywhere near climate neutrality, and the fact that they have not even, the heads of countries obviously, have not even gone to Glasgow to participate in the conference is a bit of a stumbling block, I would say. Let's hope that with the final outcome of this conference, they are convinced to do better and do more, and encouraged by peer pressure, if you like, from everybody else. I mean, one good thing the European Commission is proposing in this sense, because so far I have mentioned the carbon trading scheme. Whenever a country is a member state of the EU produces goods which have carbon baked into them, these go towards the carbon allocation of a country. Now, this is being kind of, so far, there's been a way to go around it by moving your business outside the EU, producing outside and importing the already carbon-baked goods. Now, what the Commission is proposing is even if goods are imported, they will have to be taxed for carbon emissions. So in that sense, this will make, hopefully, China, Russia, and other less eager countries to meet the expectations take stock and rethink their strategies. So fingers crossed.
Thank you. Fingers crossed. Let me see if there are any comments from the public. In fact, we have a question to Carmenu Vella. What is the relationship between the blue and green economy, Mr. Vella?
I think the simplest answer to that is there cannot be any green without blue. Just to give you an example, when we're talking about climate change, we have to keep in mind that the ocean is the prime climate regulator. So you cannot, anything that is happening in climate is happening because of the changes happening in the ocean. And I think if we really want to, let me be a little bit, to save the planet, first we have to save the ocean. Without saving the ocean, we cannot save the planet. Obviously, that is from an environmental aspect, but we have to even communicate the benefits that we're getting from the ocean, because we have to keep in mind that from the ocean we're getting 50% of our oxygen. The ocean is the prime carbon sink, absorbing more than 30% of our emissions. It absorbs 90% of the increase in temperature, in the planet temperature. We talk about biodiversity on land, but more than half of the planet's biodiversity is in the ocean. So we have to keep in mind all these benefits that we are getting from the ocean. And if we kill the ocean, we will be killing all the planet's environment, we will be killing all the planet's economy, because most of the economy, even the land-based economy, depends on the benefits that we get from the ocean. Then obviously, we are looking at the possibilities of the blue economy in the ocean. Today, 95% of the global economy is all land-based. We are getting less than 5% of our global economy from the ocean. So there is a huge economic opportunity in the ocean. But along with the economic opportunities, we also have the environmental responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Vella. In fact, a direct question here as well. Let's target this with you, Dr. Grech. What is the relationship between actually the climate change and the employers?
It's a very pertinent question, actually, because you might think, I mean, why are we discussing this here today as an employers association? Well, first of all, I mean, it's quite cliche to say climate change will affect everyone. So it's inevitable on a human level that it's in all our interests to make sure that we take the necessary steps to stop it or reverse the damage we have done. But one direct link that is coming out very clearly, for example, is the high rise in energy prices, which is affecting global production everywhere. It's an issue which has even been addressed by the European Commission a couple of weeks ago. There has been a toolbox of measures adopted of how economies could still continue, the 27 EU economies could still continue the recovery process despite this big spoke in the wheels, which nobody probably foresaw. And the result of this high spike in energy prices is being attributed to the fact that just like after the war, there is a big insurgence of activity, a big insurgence of production, which is making a lot of demands on a system, on structures which had lain dormant for some time. Yeah. And now there's, the usual demand and supply. If production costs increase, of course, employers, businesses have to bear the brunt. What are you going to do? Are you going to pass it on to your consumers? Are you going to reduce your employment capacity because you have to make up for the cost? So this is definitely a very big factor in terms of the audience that we have today in terms of employment. Otherwise, I mean, we also have very basic considerations to keep in mind. We've all been through a very hot, stiflingly hot summer. Yes. Keeping air conditioning on in all offices or in all our businesses, that again adds to the costs, not talking about the energy prices I have just mentioned. So for employers, I mean, who have to think not only of their personal day-to-day costs. As an employee, I just go to the office, use whatever is at my disposal, perform my duties, and go back home, and then have to think only of my own personal consumption costs. As an employer, you have to think of all these from a business perspective, what it costs you to produce what you used to produce, what it costs you to keep your employees safe, happy, and motivated to come to work, in terms also of salaries and benefits that they get. So it's a snowballing effect, I guess, for businesses and employers.
Final question to you, Dr. Grech. What is the Commission's assessment on the result so far in meeting the objectives at present, of course, what we're discussing?
From the Commission has been, first of all, for example, this RRP, the recovery plan, which Malta has submitted, before it was approved, the Commission had to assess what Malta is proposing to finance with EU money, where it stands and how strong its commitment is, how relevant it is to meeting the objectives. One of the issues which Malta faces, and which is quite a dilemma also because it is an island, is our dependence on transportation to get everything delivered, everything we need. We are not self-sufficient as an island, so most of the daily consumables have to be imported. That requires fuel, that requires flying, that requires shipping. All this is very high in energy consumption. So in that sense, Malta is quite disadvantaged. But at the same time, realistically speaking, there's very little we can do about it, because if we need primary goods for quality of life, I mean, we can't say, the Commission can't tell us, no, you just have to live on the vegetables you grow locally, you know. One big issue which the Commission has taken up with Malta time and again is the number of the high percentage of carbon emissions from vehicles on the roads. Malta is the country with the highest number of vehicles per capita. No matter how many roads we widen and increase and improve, there's always traffic jams going on. The mentality of the people has to change. I mean, we all suffer heat, yes. But why do you keep you wait? If I see it in summer, for example, very often, and it really irritates me, somebody waiting in a car with the engine running and the AC on. Do we realize how much damage we're doing just by, just to feel comfortable ourselves? Get out of the car, go and sit somewhere in the shade. Social conscience start on these little changes that we can bring to our lives. Starts from us at a personal level. Switch off the lights, switch off the AC, and close the windows when you have the AC on. When you're not using it, of course, switch it off when you're not in the room. Simple changes. The European Commission believes that Malta still has quite a way to go, especially on the kind of fuel that we use to meet our energy demands. And there is a big, strong push towards renewable sources of energy, which Malta unfortunately does not tap enough.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grech. I would like a final comment from Giorgio and then Mr. Vella as well before we conclude this part where we are addressing the green economy and its challenges from an international perspective. One final comment from Giorgio and Mr. Vella.
Thank you. Well, now, just maybe stressing, I think, one of the main messages that I've heard during the conference, now the fact that everybody has a role to play and all the stakeholders have to be engaged, from the example that has just been put from consumers' behavior changes to entrepreneurs, big companies, the industry sectors, financial actors are crucial for this transition. And of course, also policymakers that need to adopt the proper regulatory schemes to ensure that there is this transition towards sustainable consumption, production, and circular economy. Thank you very much.
Giorgio. Mr. Vella?
Yes, my final comment would be that, first of all, here we're dealing with global problems, global issues, and we need global solutions, but more than global solutions, we need global action. But we have to keep in mind that what really is going to make the difference is not government commitments, but individual decisions. Everything will depend on the type of car that I use. Everything will depend on the energy that I use. Everything will depend on my choice of food, on the amount of food that I waste, on the amount of pollution that I put in the ocean, on the amount of perhaps plastic that I use. I'm saying that, yes, we have to look at the issue globally, but then each and every one of us will have to offer our own bit of action.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vella. Thank you, Giorgio. Thank you, Dr. Grech and Kadia, for being with us for this part. I would now like to thank a few people, if you allow me, for having this conference, the success that it's been today. Thank you to the logistic team, starting with Anton Schkembri and his team, for their full collaboration and excellent services offering here at the Dolmen Hotel in Aura throughout all this morning's event. All those directly involved in the logistics, technical services, audiovisual and studio setup, C Consulta for all media coverage and event corporate branding design, dmedia.tv for entrepreneurs video clips production, Gadgets, who was responsible for the technology facilities, our Green Journey Ahead video production, Anton Vella as main coordinator of this event, who was very well assisted here by Sharon Farrugia, and who are keeping me posted at what is coming next before we conclude. An event which was also fully supported by Kevin Borge as a consultant to MEA, MEA's council members and MEA's secretariat, which was well led by Dorian Azzopardi-Celia. Obviously, last but not least, a special and final thanks goes to Joanne Bondin, MEA's president, and Joseph Farrugia, MEA's director general, for their unconditional commitment in supporting this event. It is time to, yes, in fact, let's show a clip to share more sponsors. Thank you with us, and we'll come to conclude this forums. Stay with us. This SME National Forum, part of the SME Week Malta 2021 program of events, is being brought to you by the Malta Employers Association in collaboration with the Ministry for the Economy and Industry. Sponsored by the Foundation for Transport, the Malta Development Bank, and Malta Enterprise. Supported by the Ministry for the Environment, Climate Change and Planning, the Ministry for Energy, Enterprise and Sustainable Development, and the Ministry for Transport, Infrastructure and Capital Projects. With the participation of eSkills Malta Foundation, Family Business Office, Business First, MCAST, EU Malta Office, Partit Nazzjonalista, the Malta Chamber of SMEs, Malta Maritime Forum, Intelligent Planning Forum University of Malta, Sustainable Built Environment Malta, IISBE Malta Chapter University of Malta, Weave Consulting, Greenskip Limited, eCabs, So Limited, Eurobridge, AIS Technology Limited, Malta Road Safety Council, Tech.mt. Special thanks also go to Dolmen Hotel Aura, C Consulta and Bold Agency, The Media TV, Gadgets Limited, and all other subcontractors involved. And joining us for the last part of this forum is the leader of the opposition and leader of Partit Nazzjonalista, Honourable Bernard Grech. Good afternoon to you. How are you?
Good afternoon to you, and obviously to all the followers.
Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
I have a few questions and introductions to do. So let us first start with the first one. Dr. Grech, in your speeches, you have labeled the environment as the center of all issues. The MEA believes that economic expansion and environmental protection must go hand in hand in what is termed as sustainable growth that enhances the quality of life and our people, of course. How will your party in government support SMEs in building necessary muscle to retain competitiveness while at the same time becoming more and more economically, socially and environmentally sustainable?
Thank you for your question. Of course, advancing the environmental agenda would be and is a top priority of my party. I think that we have, however, to be honest, both in Malta and abroad. We can't afford to have a situation where in Malta we are most of the time trying to negotiate with the Commission to reduce our environmental targets and then try to, on the international forum, say that Malta and small islands are most to suffer from climate change. So we have to be honest and also always saying the right things and also doing the right things. We can't be contradictory, of course. And we believe that the SMEs and our businesses need to be told the truth, because whenever we do not anticipate what will happen or what might happen, and we not read the situation, of course, it is always not only the country, but also our businesses that get to suffer from any given situation. And in this regard, we are looking at, of course, to make sure that we get to the targets, we do not negotiate with the targets, and we have to be innovative and also make sure that we are ahead of our competitors. We have to understand and we have to accept that there are certain realities that happen every now and then that you can't really fight against. Let me give you one example. We all recall the treasured Onella, right? When the tailors at the time realized that the Onella is not anymore being sought after, not anymore in fashion, no? They sought other ways how to make money. They redirected, obviously, their business because they understood that they can't fight change. So we have to fight change, but when we realize that that is something that we cannot really change, then we have to adapt. We have to change ourselves. We have to find ways how to redirect our businesses. And in this way, for example, we have to make sure that EU directives are followed, and we cannot try to make our businesses believe that we can cocoon them forever. We can help them. We can help them be more sustainable. We can help them be more productive. We can help them be more competitive. But when we need to change, we have to help them also change in that way themselves as well. So they have to find new markets. They have to find also and reinvent themselves. And this is what we are trying to do. We are trying to make sure that we are realistic, we are honest with the people, we are honest with the SMEs, so we make sure that they change as long as they continue to become competitive and productive. And climate change is not something that is going to be solved by taking selfies with famous people. It's going to be solved by saying nice things at seminars and on the international forum. It's going to be fought by being realistic, by really pulling the ropes together, and by making sure that everybody understands that we have to change ourselves, otherwise climate will change us forever.
Do you believe that enough is being done? Because there is a lot of education, there are a lot of incentives. This morning we've spent the whole morning discussing all the things that are basically there on the table for the leaders, for the SMEs to take charge and go ahead. So what more?
No, it's not enough is being done, as I said. We cannot set targets and then try to renegotiate and reduce those targets. We have to be more ambitious, and ambition is going to be and should be the key word to guide us forward. Of course, we know that the government, with regards to emissions, has also renegotiated and lowered the targets. We cannot afford that. We have to make sure that we are realistic but we have to make sure to implement all the targets that we set for ourselves.
Dr. Grech, you are criticizing the current administration for registering a high budget deficit, leading to rising public debt. Whilst this, of course, is factually correct, do you agree that the current deficit is exclusively the result of fiscal interventions to mitigate the impact of COVID on businesses? And do you foresee that the government may have to alter its priorities to achieve a sustainable fiscal balance?
I think the facts speak for themselves. The government has admitted that it is envisaging a deficit of 2.8 billion for these 2 years, which is, of course, 1.3 billion higher than the 1.5 billion that the government said that it has spent to help our economy, to help our businesses, to help our people. Which, of course, we were always on board with that. We were always in favor of making sure that our businesses get the benefits and get the wage supplements, and also that we issued the vouchers for the people to make sure that they can spend and help the consumption as well. We were, in fact, the first that mentioned the idea of having vouchers. But that means that there is a shortfall of 1.3 billion. There is an extra overspending of 1.3 billion. And if that spending is going towards some sort of investment, one would say it might be a good investment. But there is nothing to show for this. And it is evident that there's a lot of spending, and then there's also a lot of waste. And when we say this, we are sure that government is being reckless with our money. We have the electric gas contract, we have the Vitals contract. Now we know that even Stewart is calling this contract as fraudulent. We have a court case against this deal because we know that government is wasting our money onto something that is not rendering anything to our population. In fact, we have just learned that government is going to spend 70 million on the Vitals contract next year, when we know that there is nothing to show for that amount. We know also that the government in the past has bought a phantom wind energy farm in Montenegro, where we know that has been overpriced by at least 7 million. These are different scenarios, different examples of how the government is not spending but wasting public funds, and this means that public debt is becoming unsustainable because there is no investment, there is no particular investment that is going to render more money in the future. This 1.3 billion is being wasted. So how do we go about it? First of all, we have to make sure that we issue the right contracts the right way by the tendering process. We want businesses to participate. That is where we want to create a level playing field. We want them to be able to make sure that they can get into trying to acquire the possibility of working for the government, for taking a public contract, but by competing and therefore offering the right services, the right product at the right prices. If we continue spending money by direct orders, that means the possibility that there is no level playing field and that there is waste of public funds because we are not necessarily getting the best service or the best product with the best price. So we have to be careful. It's like every parent does with the finances of the family. We earn money, but then we spend them the best way possible and get the best fair worth for that money for the family. This is how we should be managing our public finances, and this is what I'm promising to make sure that we will be spending our public finances. It is not acceptable that 65% of our debts in these 2 years are being unaccounted for.
Dr. Grech, the mayor, like the opposition, is concerned with the country's grey listing and its effect on investment and investors' perceptions, as recently highlighted in the EY Attractiveness Survey for Malta. You are criticizing the government for its lack of clarity on how it is remediating the situation and indeed a definite date by when it is to put Malta back on the white list, where, of course, it belongs. If you had to be elected to power, what makes you so certain that you will be able to resolve the situation in the first, 90 days?
I think that this has been already proven, because at the end of the day, the government has said that we have passed the Manival test with flying colors, and I agree with this. So it is not a question of implementing laws. It's not a question of implementing procedures. The procedures are there, the laws are there, but we have to make sure that these are now put into force. These are enforced. So it is a question of credibility. Unfortunately, our country lacks credibility at the moment just because our government lacks credibility. To put it very crudely, the international partners are not believing that our government, that our Prime Minister has the political will to make sure that the laws are really enforced, but not only against the small businesses, but also against all those persons, all those politicians that have ruined our reputations. We have to fight this on the right platform, and we have to make sure that, first of all, our people, the electorate, sends a clear message. That is the credibility that Malta lacks, and if the PN government is elected, if I am elected Prime Minister, if I am given the trust, that means that the Maltese people have sent a very clear message. We want to change. We want to show the whole world that we are a credible country. We have chosen the right way to change the situation. We can't keep performing the way we are performing, a government that is not implementing these laws. And therefore, that would be the first step. The second step would be making sure that we give the right tools and the right resources. We have already suggested, we have already provided possibilities. In my speech after the budget, I have outlined 2 ways how we will be helping, and we want to be helping also our professionals by providing a centralized department so that they will be able to perform the due diligence reports, okay, that will be helping, of course, the professionals, but also providing the possibility of helping also those that have a difficulty with regards to the insurance. So these are 2 ways how we will be helping in this scenario. But then we have to, I am confident that in 90 days we can manage to convince our international partners that we have taken the right path forward, because the politicians that are involved will be taken to court, because the Commissioner of Police won't be held back from taking action.
Thank you very much. My final question, Dr. Grech. SMEs often complain about unnecessary red tape and administrative burdens arising out of the implementation of laws and regulation. Business organizations often accuse the public sector of gold-plating EU legislation, making it more onerous on Maltese persons and businesses. If you were Prime Minister, what assurances would you give to ensure that the so-called SME test works in an effective and transparent manner, and that the competitiveness of our SMEs is not overburdened with administrative procedures and government-induced costs?
Of course, we can't afford to have gold plating of EU legislation. We have to implement them in Malta, of course, but we can't afford that our public administration gets lazy into implementing these laws by further burdening our businesses. What we would be doing, and what I have already made very clear, make sure that we reduce the bureaucracy on our SMEs, we reduce the bureaucracy on our businesses. One way of doing that is through our promise of increasing the VAT exempt rate from 30,000 to 60,000 on turnover, to make sure that they have less paperwork to fill in, to have less, of course, bureaucratic difficulties. That is one way of helping SMEs, but then we want also to make sure that MEA and other representative bodies are well represented on EU level. That is another promise that we are putting forward to make sure that it is not just EU enforcing rules onto Malta and then the public administration making sure that they just rubber stamp those rules. We want to make sure that our representatives, in this case, the business representatives, are well represented in the EU so that they make sure they have the right changes to the laws for the benefit of our SMEs.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and I wish you the rest of a good day. We're almost coming to the end, but please do allow me to thank once again the Malta Employers Association, who in collaboration with the Ministry for Industry and Economy have sponsored this event. We would also like to thank our main sponsors, the Foundation for Transport, the Malta Development Bank and Malta Enterprise. Before we conclude, it is now also time to invite Mr. Farrugia to do his closing remarks. Thank you once again to all our online participants who were with us this morning, throughout this morning and early afternoon, this very intense conference, I must admit, but it's been one where a lot has been said, and now it is very much up to all of us participating to actually become now the leaders and take on the action from what has been said. Mr. Farrugia, how are you?
Very, very satisfied that
I was going to ask you, what is your feedback from after you've been obviously hearing everybody? What is your take on what's been said?
I think that this has been a very compact conference because we are dealing with an issue which is multifaceted, as we have seen, with so many speakers coming from different backgrounds. However, even with the focus on SMEs, we have seen the diversity of actions that are being taken, and also the diversity of actions that as a country we are required to take in order to have the necessary transition to a green and sustainable economy.
Thank you. Of course, like I always say, when there are these conferences, it is always important to discuss, to hear, but it is more about the action. So from here on, what will your role be, and what is your position?
Well, I believe that from what we've heard, change is not an option. So we're not talking about whether we should change or not, but it has to happen. We have to reinvent ourselves, and in fact, a number of ministers and even the leader of the opposition mentioned that. Therefore, the fact that we acknowledge that change is necessary, and from the many examples that we have seen, so many companies coming from different backgrounds. Some are technological companies, some are manufacturing, logistics, etc. They are all already taking actions to reorient their businesses in order to be more green. I believe that is a very positive outcome, which has to be backed by the support of organizations such as ours. And in fact, I am very proud to have had this conference today, and I thank the MEA Secretariat for the excellent work which they did, particularly Anton Vella. And the fact that it is a continuation of a previous event that we held this year. Last June, we had another conference reconciling GDP growth with well-being. Okay. And it is evident that we need to look not just at short-term growth or immediate gratification from our economic activities, but we need to reorient ourselves towards a more sustainable economy, one which also carries with it intergenerational justice, because we owe it to our children in order to inherit a better society than the one we have at the moment, unfortunately, with its many challenges. We have seen that technology can be a threat to well-being, but it can also be an ally. And these are things that I believe we have to reflect upon as a society, both as a Maltese society and also as a global society. How can we turn technology into an ally? An ally that gives us a better standard of living. How can we turn, we've heard Professor Torpiano talk about the buildings, the new Bauhaus. How can we have buildings that are not there for the sake of erecting buildings, but in order to enjoy yourself living in such buildings that you feel good in. Another important point I believe that was mentioned was by Professor Borge when she referred to the just transition. Change brings with it friction. And in the coming years, we will see a trend, and it's already happening, whereby there will be, in the field of employment, for example, which is MEA specialization, both job destruction, but also job creation.
Yes.
Now, if this happens overnight, clearly there will be a lot of pain. So the concept of just transition implies how we can implement such changes, but in such a manner that all stakeholders will benefit. In a manner that we will not have people who are literally left behind, who are homeless and poor, for example, because they've lost their job. We need to ensure that we provide the necessary opportunities through training, through education. And again, MCAST, the director of the MCAST Institute, in fact, referred to the change that they are bringing about even in the content of their courses in order to have a better input of green technology, because that is the way we are heading. Therefore, the more we are proactive, the more we anticipate these changes, the more likely we will be to have this just transition into a greener and more sustainable economy. And this has to come from all sectors of the economy. It is something which has to be mainstreamed, even mainstreamed into our educational system. I don't really think that we could have a unit somewhere about greening the economy, but this is something which implies a change in culture. It's a different way at looking at things, and the more we start at an early age with our citizens, the more we have an acceptance of the new way of life, of embracing new technologies, and therefore to bring about the change which is expected of us.
We are certainly living in a time of change, and I think the ones that will find it the hardest are the people who are lazy, who don't want to make the change, literally, but I do not believe that
we have to
hopefully
them.
They are here with us. So those
Exactly.
are, so it is up to us then who are proactive, who are energized, who actually believe that this is the way not only forward, but also the way we need to live. You mentioned very well the factor of well-being, and I'm glad you brought it up. After all, we do want to feel well about our jobs, about what we are doing.
That's why we work, that's why we invest.
And it's not about the amount of money, but how am I going to enjoy what I earn in a fair enough way, and be able to enjoy, of course, with my family and with the rest of the citizens and the country in a very fair and just way. So
it's about generation of wealth. Mm-hmm. We work and we invest to generate wealth. Through that wealth, then we enjoy a decent or a good standard of living. Investors expect a return on their investment in terms of profit, and employees expect fair wages and compensation. But that is all the result of the generation of wealth. And now we're saying it is the result of the sustainable generation of wealth. It is something which has to be ongoing, something which we know that we are not just draining finite resources, but we are creating an eco-structure which is self-sustainable, whereby we can make better utilization of resources, whereby they can regenerate themselves. And that's why we talk about the circular economy. It's not just use and throw away, but use, but dispose, but use again, trying to find other uses. And this is where technology can be a useful ally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farrugia, MEA's Director General. We have really come to the end of our hybrid event today. I would like to thank once again the distinguished guests and keynote speakers and panelists, entrepreneurs who share their business experiences with us today. Thank you to all you registered online participants and those who followed us today live on Facebook. And once again, thanks to MEA for giving me this opportunity to be here with you today. Have a lovely day. Thank you very much. Thank you.